Republican primary debate, live from Indianapolis.
Good evening. I'm Mike Bars, anchor at Wish TV in Indianapolis. Our Next Star team is proud to be your local election headquarters. Tonight, we're proud to bring you all three candidates for the Republican primary for the U.S. Senate together for a statewide debate, taking your questions directly to them so you can hear the answers for yourself. The candidates: Mike Braun is a businessman from Jasper who served one term in the Indiana House of Representatives. Todd Rokita is serving his fourth term in the U.S. House of Representatives and is a former Indiana Secretary of State. And Luke Messer is serving his third term in the U.S. House and is a former executive director of the Indiana State Republican Party. Now to our moderators for the evening, led by my co-anchor, Brooke Martin.
All right, thanks so much, Mike. I am joined by two other moderators tonight. David Williams, State House Bureau Chief for all of our Next Star stations throughout the state of Indiana. Brad Bird, lead anchor for WEHT-TV in Evansville. Brad has been a part of Indiana journalism for more than 40 years. Thank you both for being with us tonight. So we held a card draw just before coming on air to determine this podium placement for the candidates. All right, rules for tonight. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer a question, 30 seconds to answer any follow-up question from the moderators. When the time is up, you'll hear this bell ring. The candidates have also agreed to skip opening statements, so we will get straight to the questions, gentlemen, which I should mention they have not seen tonight. We start with a major international development this week. On Friday, the U.S. and its allies launched strikes against Syria after an alleged chemical weapons attack on civilians. Do you agree with President Trump's decision to strike without congressional approval? Mr. Braun, we'll start with you.
Yes, you know, President Trump, when he got there, he was a disruptor, somebody that, thinks outside of the box. And in this case, there's been a red line crossed a couple times in his time in there and before when we didn't do anything. I think he hit it right on the money. He did the right response and also kept it within the context that we do not want to get entangled in other disputes in the Mideast, these sectarian wars. He is conscious of losing lives and costing treasure. So I think that in this case, he hit the response right on the money, and I think it sends a clear message to everyone there that you can't take him for granted. He's going to do what he says he's going to do, and I like that. That's exactly the kind of thinking I would have had, the way I've, conducted myself in the real world, in being in the legislature. I couldn't ask for a better response from President Trump. Fully behind it.
Mr. Braun, thank you. Mr. Rokita.
Well, thanks. Thanks to Wish for moderating this debate. Thanks for everyone tuning in. Before I get to that serious question, I want to say I'm glad we're doing it early. It gives Luke a chance to get home to Virginia tonight on the last plane. And we have to remember that today is April 15th. This is traditionally tax day. And the two gentlemen I'm standing next to, and if you include Joe Donnelly in that as well, responsible for over $1 billion worth of tax increases each. I've never voted for tax increases, and I never will. Now, on this issue of Syria, I completely support President Trump. We are doing the opposite of President Obama. We are not leading from behind anymore. And the rest of the world is noticing. Not only are we providing relief to innocent Syrian civilians, but dictators around the world now are having a different attitude, and they're paying attention, and they're making conciliatory responses. And that's because we're leading again. And that's very important. I completely support President Trump and what he's doing.
Mr. Messer.
Well, first, let me answer your question, because it is a very serious question. America is safest when America is strong. And Hoosiers are excited to see this president show strength on the world stage. The president drew a red line on chemical weapons in Syria, and then when that red line was crossed, this president showed strength and responded in a measured way. Contrast that to Joe Donnelly's president, Barack Obama, who drew a red line in Syria and then did nothing. Frankly, our choices in Syria are limited and not what they could be if we had a president who'd been strong earlier. President Obama, who Joe Donnelly, who we're running against today, has consistently supported. I'm Luke Messer. I'm going to say this a few times tonight, but I am who I say I am. I support President Trump's peace through strength policies, and when I go to the United States Senate, that's what I'm going to support and vote for.
Gentlemen, in a follow-up, if the president asked, would you support extended military action in Syria? Mr. Messer, 30 seconds.
Well, listen, I think it's long overdue that we debate another authorization of military force. The authorization of military force that we're operating under is one that really came right after 9/11. I'm not going to answer that kind of hypothetical, but I can tell you this. I support President Trump. I think Hoosiers support his strong policies across the globe and certainly in his dealing with Syria. And I look forward to working with him in the United States Senate.
Mr. Rokita, 30 seconds.
You know, I too support President Trump. I like what he's doing. And Hoosiers don't want to see innocent Syrians being gassed and being killed. And so we have got to support President Trump in this effort. The UAMF military force agreement needs to be debated again in Congress for sure. I will say that. And we need to make sure we preserve Congress's Article 1 powers. We represent the people directly, and we have got to have a say in prolonged engagements.
Mr. Braun, extended military action if the president asked?
You know, President Trump put a team together, and with General Mattis, I have full confidence that they will do the right thing. I think, as I said earlier, you've got to always look at the big picture. And I think President Trump and his team of military advisors are going to know when we need to strike in the case of Syria and when we need to hold back and make sure that we're not getting entangled in wars that are going to cost lives and treasure. So I have full confidence in him and would trust him accordingly.
Well, another dominant topic of conversation over the past month is one closer to home, and that's guns and school safety. One proposal has been to arm trained teachers in schools across the country. Gentlemen, raise your hand if you support allowing trained teachers to carry guns in schools, if you would. You all raised your hand. You all support arming teachers. It is worth noting, Indiana Superintendent of Public Instruction, Jennifer McCormick, also a Republican, has called it a really, really bad idea, saying there are more risks than rewards for this. How do you respond to teachers who call this a bad idea? Mr. Rokita, 60 seconds for you.
Well, I'm proud to serve in Congress as the kindergarten through 12th grade education chairman in the House of Representatives. And I work with the superintendent of public instruction a lot in all our states. And what I can tell you is this: the reason I raise my hand is because I believe it has to be a local decision. A one-size-fits-all mandate or recipe from Washington never works. But I host school summits all over the state of Indiana. And one thing is clear: when I gather law enforcement, when I gather parents and teachers and everyone in between, superintendents and principals, what they tell me is, no, Washington, let us come up with the best practices that work for us. And if that involves arming teachers, who I'm going to assume when I raise my hand are going to be trained in the special situation of having children around, and a lot of them, that should be a local decision at the school board or at the school board, or even more local level. I am for the Second Amendment rights. I will say that. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Mr. Braun, to you.
You know, what Todd said there in terms of Second Amendment rights, I think we're going to all be in about the same place there. But what's good about Indiana is we are way out in front when it comes to school security in the first place. I was on a school board for a few years, and I know that across the state, we ought to feel more comfortable in that we've got a better security situation in place. When it comes to having somebody that is willing and able and trained within our schools to have a gun, I think it's going to be a better thing to have. And I think we'll sort that out. We're a state that works and solves problems. So even though our superintendent of schools thinks differently, I think that'll get sorted out in the long run. And I've always been a believer that you should be able to exercise your Second Amendment rights if you're law-abiding, even within a school. I would feel more secure if my grandkids were there with somebody that was armed to take on somebody that was breaking the law.
Mr. Messer.
Yeah. You know, throughout my career, I've been a champion of Second Amendment rights. And I'll tell you what I hear when I talk to Hoosiers that care about their Second Amendment rights. that they're offended that somehow people don't believe you can care about Second Amendment rights, but also care about keeping our kids safe in schools. Listen, I was proud to work with President Trump as one of the lead authors of the School Safety Act, which was in part modeled off of some programs at Southwestern Shelby High School in my congressional district, a little school down in the southern part of Shelby County that is doing an incredible job keeping their kids safe. They do it with physical facilities. They do it with training of their teachers and their student body. They have a great school resource officer, and they have a direct coordination with their sheriff's department where there's cameras in the school to keep people safe. We need to champion Second Amendment rights, which law-abiding Hoosiers respect and demand, and also look out for our schools. We can do both.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Gentlemen, we're going to talk now about a character. First, I'll start with you, Mr. Rokita. A story published this week by the Associated Press says that while you were Secretary of State, you repeatedly accessed a state Republican Party database from your very government office and on government time. Some allege that this is a violation of state ethics rules. Did you access the database from your state office, and did you violate ethics rules?
Well, thank you for the question. This is a perfect example of fake news, and it is completely false. What those anonymous sources don't realize is that, as a good Secretary of State would, I still have my emails from 9 years ago. I know who those sources are, and they're all associated with the Messer campaign. This is fake news at its worst. I completely deny it because it's wrong, and I think people see through it. The fact of the matter is, when I was your Secretary of State, we got 300 years of jail time for crooks. We were putting crooks behind bars. We were the first one to have photo identification at our polling places, and we became a model for the nation, taking the case all the way to the United States Supreme Court, where we won 6-3. And now, as I humbly stand before you, asking for your support for U.S. Senate, I can tell you that 30 states have that very same model. We have great public servants. Some are still with me now in Congress, but they serve with servants' hearts, and they shouldn't be disparaged the way they are. They're the best.
Mr. Messer, you're being specifically named by Mr. Rokita that you're behind this. Yeah. What's your response? 30 seconds.
Yeah, again, just making it up. I mean, an independent fact checker has looked at the Rokita campaign and said that his campaign is mostly false. And I'll tell you why he continues to make false attacks. It's because he wants to hide his record from Hoosiers. Todd runs around the state with a MAGA hat on, and the reality is, on the tough votes for President Trump's agenda, Todd votes no. When the President Trump, the Commander-in-Chief, asked me to vote for our troops, I voted yes. Todd voted no. He doesn't want Hoosiers to know that.
That's wrong.
Mr. Braun, now, you've supported Donald Trump's call to drain the swamp, but a recent investigation in the Indianapolis Star accused you of using your time in the Indiana General Assembly to push to cut taxes and regulations on the timber industry, one that you hold a very significant business interest in. Is that an example of the swamp? And we're talking about in southern Indiana here.
I think an example of the swamp is what we just heard, and I'll get to that in a moment. But I'm a business guy. I've done things in the real world, and that involves building a company across the country. It involves, I'm a tree farmer. Started with a few acres and built it into a long-term investment. Have farming interests, but none of that had any in terms of guys that have been in the business of politics as a career talk about, and I think they'll have to defend it along the way. So I feel real good that that was something that was so mild, it passed the ethics test. But what I'm worried about is guys like these two who have been in the game of politics for a long time that make the wrong calculations when they're out there in terms of how they vote. I think you'll find that if anybody that knows me where I'm from, straight up guy.
Mr. Braun, follow up briefly, 30 seconds. Did you seek ethics counsel on the way you handled this situation?
So in the State House, it was very clear. It had to be, and yes, we went through ethics training, and it had to be substantial, direct, and unique. And we knew that, and it was neither one of them. Who brought that up, or whether it was a Democrat, I don't know, and it had no impact on my holdings.
He's one of the largest tree farmers in the state. At the time he raised our taxes 45 times, including the largest in state history. He, at the very same time, was lowering his own business practice. You know, he acts as an outsider, but every time he rolls up his sleeve, he's rolling his sleeves up to raise our taxes.
And I think the answer to the question you asked is no. What he told you is not that he sought counsel, that he had his own opinion based on some training that he'd had. There's some real ethics questions about what he did there.
Mr. Messer, you have faced criticism that you no longer live in Indiana and heaven by. Do you live in Indiana? Can you tell us your Indiana address? And how do you respond to that allegation?
Well, one, absolutely, I live in Indiana. My address is 119 South Vine in Greensburg, Indiana. It's a home I've owned for 17 years. I'm a lifetime Hoosier, and my kids need a full-time dad. So my kids are at school with me as I serve out in Washington, D.C. I'll tell you who's left Indiana, though, is Joe Donnelly. Joe Donnelly runs around our state telling everybody that he's a conservative, and then he goes to Washington, D.C., and he votes with the liberal leadership in Washington 85% of the time. Hoosiers deserve a United States senator who votes with us 100% of the time. That's my record in Congress, and that's how I'll serve when I'm in the United States Senate.
Gentlemen, talking tariffs now, President Trump announced plans for several tariffs on Chinese products, including steel and aluminum. China has retaliated with tariffs on a long list of U.S. products. The CEO of Cummins right down the street says they're concerned, too. They may have to lay off workers because of retaliatory tariffs. Do you support the president's tariffs? Mr. Messer, I'll begin with you. 60 seconds.
I do support the president's strong posture towards China. Here's the thing everyone needs to understand. China has been in a trade war with America for quite some time. And I think most Hoosiers I talk to applaud this president for finally standing up to them. They steal our intellectual property, they manipulate their currency, and they treat our products unfairly. Now, look, the steel industry is important to America and important to Indiana, but other manufacturing industries are as well. Agriculture is important as well. You have already seen China coming to the table, starting to offer concessions because of this president's strength. We may get to this later, but this is a president who now has North Korea coming to the table talking about disarming their nuclear program. The only reason that's happening is because this president is demonstrating strength. I applaud the strength he's showing towards China, and we need to not allow this bully to bully America around.
Thank you. Mr. Braun.
So, I think when it comes to tariffs, you never want to go there unless you've got a particular purpose with it. Free trade and reciprocal trade is what the world economy is based on. But when you get an outsider like Donald Trump, it's not going to be the same dynamic we're used to, business as usual in Washington. He, I think, approached this perfectly. He threw it out there as a discussion point. Of course, it was going to be aimed at all steel and aluminum coming in. Ended up in a perfect place. And as Luke said, we are now bringing the president of China to the table. But I think the big dynamic you got to keep in mind is if you want true reinforcements for President Trump that thinks out of the box, you cannot have guys like my two opponents that have voted for fast-tracking Obama's trade deals, voting for funding of budgets that had Planned Parenthood and executive amnesty in there. Get a guy like me in there, and you'll have a defender of President Trump.
Thank you, Mr. Braun.
He addressed us directly. The legislation that Mike has referenced throughout his campaign, he's distorting the facts. Look, here's the reality. That legislation has allowed President Trump to negotiate a tougher trade deal with South Korea. That legislation has allowed President Trump to get tough on NAFTA and look at renegotiating that. And President Trump has just asked for this power to be reauthorized. I'm glad our president has that power. It's important that we have free trade, but free trade needs to be fair, and this legislation allows the president to make sure other countries are treating us fairly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rokita.
Yeah, thank you. And the reason Mike Braun doesn't have any idea what he's talking about is because he doesn't know, apparently, that there are 535 members of Congress in the United States Senate. president. You cannot negotiate anything with 535 people. You know, Luke's right on that. So we give the president authority to negotiate on our behalf a better deal, and Mr. Trump is doing that, and he just asked. He just asked this week to have that exact same authority. So the ads that Mike Braun are running are completely off base. I want to discuss tariffs. I think what's been said here is correct. You know what? Our trade deficit is worse, the worst we've had it in world history. We have got to try something different. We're doing this in a very targeted way. And if an industry is being affected after a while inequitably, let's make some adjustments based on data, not fear or emotions. I want to go back to Luke Messer as well. That address he cited, yeah, it's a 2 or 3 bedroom house. His mom lives there. He's got several kids. They live in Virginia. And I think it's an insult to the truck drivers around the state that have to leave their kids once a week to say they're bad parents because they are not around during the week.
You. Mr. Braun, rebuttal for you, 30 seconds.
Well, when it comes to whether I'm going to live in the state or not, I can tell you that I'm not going to pick up stakes and go to Washington, D.C. That happens too often with people across the board. And when it comes to my being able to weigh in on things, I think it's going to be my background that makes the difference. I've lived my conservatism in the trenches, not through the lens of politicians. That's the key issue in this race. And I'm proud that I'll be able to see things from the real world, not as a career politician.
Gentlemen, thank you. A follow-up question. The president has said America's farmers, including here in Indiana, may feel some sort of short-term pain and that they're doing this for the country. I want to tell you that we talked to the Indiana Soybean Alliance just a couple days ago. Here's what they said.
The other part of the whole tariff is we will probably see some farmers go out of business because this is one of the worst economic times for farmers.
A follow-up, 30 seconds to each of you. Should Indiana farmers, including soybean farmers and pork farmers here at home in Indiana, prepare to be victims of a trade war with China the president says is easily won? Mr. Braun first. 30 seconds.
Okay. So President Trump has started the process, and of course it's hypothetical that that might occur in a significant way. I trust him fully because he's gained his experience in the dynamic of the real world in terms of how the economy works. And I think so far he's been masterful in terms of what he's done. So everybody could be impacted if it devolved into a trade war. Let's not go there. It hasn't happened. He's hit it right on the money.
Thank you very much, Mr. Messer.
Listen, I look out for Indiana's farmers, but I want to tell you about a conversation I had Friday night with a Shelby County farmer who told me, Luke, stay tough with the president. Stick with him. We can't allow China to bully this country. So I can tell you, listen, we want to make sure that these tariffs and these policies are done in a way that looks out for American agriculture. But allowing China to bully us on the world stage cannot be allowed any longer. And the Indiana farmers I talk to understand that.
Thank you, Mr. Messer. Mr. Okita, 30 seconds.
I've had similar conversations with our farmers, soybean folks, and all our agricultural sector folks come into my office regularly. We have direct conversations, and they care about America too, not just their industry. And I'm not saying that they have to be victims. I'm saying let's see if someone's inequitably treated or not, and then make adjustments there. I want to go back to what Mr. Braun said about his background. I'll tell you what his background is. He imports products from China and Mexico, sells them around the country and in Indiana, and then displaces Hoosier workers. Trade deals that we're having right now are working great for Mr. Braun. We need to do better for the rest of us.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
I'd like to respond to that.
Mr. Braun, go ahead, 30 seconds.
So 95% of my suppliers are American companies, and you'll get this out of guys like these two that have not done a lick of anything in the private sector. I've signed the front side of paychecks my entire career. These two guys have been endorsing the backside of a political check or a government check for their lifetimes. I've been out there working in the real world. They've been seeing it through the lens of a politician.
You know, Mike, this has been your speech all throughout the campaign. You say you're an outsider. If you're outside anything, You're outside the Republican Party. You and I both know you're a 14-year office holder, not an outsider. You and I both know that you voted in Democratic primaries while you were serving in office. You and I both know you voted Democrat through the Mitch Daniels years, that you were a Democrat well into the Obama years. How can any Hoosier conservative trust you to go to Washington and look out for them? Look, we already have a U.S. Senator in Joe Donnelly, who we're running against, who says he's conservative back here, votes liberal in Washington.
Mr. Messer, thank you. Mr. Rokita, you have 30 seconds if you'd like.
I was invoked too, and that's exactly right. His entire adult life, he's voted Democratic. He says he's an outsider. He was on the school board for 8 or 10 years, and you know what he gave us? Well, we were fighting to end Common Core, which we did successfully. He was putting Common Core, that terrible national standard, in his own county, taking Obama race to the top education money in exchange for indoctrinating our kids under Common Core. He's a Democrat.
All right, gentlemen, we are taking a turn now, and I want to talk immigration. The federal government estimates Indiana is home to 9,000 DACA recipients, or so-called dreamers. Again, raise your hand if you believe the 9,000 DACA recipients here in Indiana should be deported. So no one believes they should be deported. What is your message then to these thousands of Indiana DACA recipients who are currently living in limbo? And if you would address them directly, Mr. Messer.
Listen, my position would be the position of the President of the United States. The President of the United States has said that no wall, no DACA. We have a President of the United States that ran on a platform of securing our border and enforcing our immigration laws. And frankly, if that was unpopular, Hillary Clinton would be our president. But the American people and the people of Indiana voted for tougher immigration laws, tougher enforcement of those laws, and a wall securing our border. President Trump has tried to work on common sense initiatives that would allow us to deal with the DACA individuals and also secure our secure our border with a wall and move to a common sense merit-based immigration system. Frankly, that's common sense most Hoosiers would support and endorse. It's common sense that Joe Donnelly works against. That's the reality. We're here to run against Joe Donnelly. Joe Donnelly talks conservative back home, but he's voting with a liberal crowd in Washington that's fighting these things. I am who I say I am. I'm going to tell you today I support immigration law. I'll support it in tougher immigration laws. I'll do it in Washington, too.
Thank you, Mr. Messer. Mr. Braun, please address these DACA recipients in Indiana.
First thing we've got to do is secure the border. All the other issues related to a border that has not been respected over time has got to be secondary. We secure the border, build a wall where we need to. We then take issues like DACA, visa lotteries, sanctuary cities, and we've got to deal with them. I trust President Trump again will do the right thing. I want to get back to these guys who have been hammering me on voting in Democratic primaries. That is what you do when you have nothing else to talk about. That's laughable that you consider serving on a school board as an insider like these two guys. So anybody, that also tells you don't know anything about politics south of Indianapolis, where it was conservative Democrats controlled those offices. I never voted for Obama, never voted for Hillary. That could only be dreamt up by somebody like this guy. So I want to put that to rest so voters know I'm a true conservative, lived it in the trenches, not career politicians.
My name was invoked. I like 30 seconds.
I'm going to go to Mr. Rokita and stay on immigration for now, if you will.
I want to address that. Look, yeah, I got that. That's only fair. Look, you know what's not laughable? It's putting Common Core in our schools and institutionalizing our children that way. Common Core is a terrible idea. That's what's not laughable. That was my comment, Mike. And you know what? I come from Lake County. You don't get much more of a Democratic county than that. I'm a conservative from Lake County. Everyone watching knows that. I always found Republicans on the ballot to vote for. Mitch Daniels, Rex Early, whoever the candidates were, there were Republicans up and down the ballot to vote for, even in Lake County. That's a bad excuse, Mike.
Mr. Messer.
Yeah, and I would also say, Mike, serving on the school board is a real job. I mean, you did it for 11 years. I think it's a pretty important job.
Exactly.
You thought it was important enough to do it for 11 years. And the whole issue here with Hoosiers is that you haven't talked about this through this campaign. You've tried to hide it. You've tried to run around with ads that make you look like something you're not, Mike. And if Hoosiers can't trust Joe Donnelly to say he's conservative and go and then vote right in Washington, why should they trust you when your life pattern tells them that you're a lifetime Democrat, just like Joe Donnelly?
It's not 25 years years of being a career politician, and everybody knows that.
Mr. Braun, anything else? You have 30 seconds if you'd like.
Yes. So when you get these kinds of arguments, it's clearly these guys are trying to defend their life. You know, one of them, by definition, is not going to be a career politician anymore. And when you go to the point of calling a school board in your local community as being part of a institutionalized politician like these two, laughable.
All I have to say is you helped President Obama get Common Core in all our schools.
All right, I want to stay on topic here, and that's immigration.
So
Mr.
for a minute
Rokita,
from me on the DACA, what I would tell the DACA categorized young men and women is that you ought to go to Joe Donnelly and you ought to say, hey, you could have solved this. You and your Democratic Party. President Trump, and I completely agree with him, was offering a solution. Give us the money to build a real wall, a concrete wall, so that we can know who's coming in this country and who we're keeping out. And by the way, we can keep things out of this country too, like 95% of the heroin that's coming in. The Democrats didn't let it happen. They'll never let it happen. They have to keep pandering to DACA recipients. So my message to DACA recipients is come to the Republican Party. Come to the party of the rule of law. Look, it's a bad situation you're in. Let's build the wall first so it doesn't happen to others. If you care about the situation you're in, you're going to care, DACA recipient, about others not having to follow in your footsteps.
I'm glad you mentioned the wall. I do want to touch on that. The president has repeatedly said Mexico will be paying for this wall. He's also now floated the idea of using money from the Department of Defense. As a follow-up question, gentlemen, who should foot this bill? You have 30 seconds, Mr. Rokita.
Well, I'm for, because this atrocious spending bill that we've just had, that I voted against, one of the reasons I voted against it was because it didn't build a concrete wall, it didn't build a real wall. That's why Nancy Pelosi was smiling from ear to ear. It was some couple miles of some fencing. We need a real wall. Because we didn't get it, I completely support President Trump in wanting to send our military down to secure a border. No nation worth living in doesn't have a secure border.
Who should pay for it?
Well, ultimately, I would hope, I agree with the president. I'd like to see Mexico pay for it, but we're not going to wait around for that. We'll send them a bill. We'll take it out in trade. We'll do whatever we have to do. We need to get a wall built.
Mr. Messer.
Well, you can either believe Nancy Pelosi or you can believe President Trump. President Trump said that our most recent legislation started building out the wall, and I voted with him to make that happen. Look, Mexico should pay for this wall. The president campaigned on that, and there are other ways to make that happen. I worked with President Trump and led the fight to end child tax credits for illegal immigrants in this country. Because we've ended them, between $4 or $7 billion a year are now going to come back to our coffers. Dollars like that could be directed to the wall.
Mr. Braun, how do we pay for a wall?
Well, again, President Trump, an outsider, a guy that figures things out on his own, what he's done is thrown it out there, and he's got the ball rolling on it. We've got to have a wall. When your border has been abused for decades with people disrespecting the law, that's the only way it's going to occur. And it's going to need to be built wherever the traffic is the highest. He'll figure it out in terms of who's going to pay for it. It's a top priority. We've got to stem the flow of illegal traffic coming across the border.
Is Department of Defense funds an option for you?
Sure. If President Trump decides that he's going to take some funds to get the ball rolling there, I'd trust him in doing it.
Gentlemen,
it's that big a priority.
Let's talk about Robert Mueller and the Russian investigation. President Trump has repeatedly called the Russian investigation a witch hunt. His words, followed by an exclamation point on his tweets, often stated on camera, often a quick response to a reporter's question during a photo op. Many of those close to the president have called for an immediate end to this investigation. Do you believe the investigation should end immediately, right now? I'll start with you, Mr. Messer.
Listen, I do believe it should end. I can tell you that I've talked to Hoosiers, and I've not talked to one Hoosier who tells me that they believe the Russians made them vote for either presidential candidate in this campaign, or in the 2006 campaign. Okay? And what's happened now over the course of the last year, there has been no collusion shown between the Trump campaign and Russia. So it appears now that the Mueller campaign is going on and looking at other issues. I believe what's happened to this special investigation is what happens to almost all of these special investigations. They become highly politicized, looking for a scalp. Hoosiers want us to get past this Russian issue and move on to the issues that are really about making lives better for working Hoosiers. How do we get the economy growing even more? How do we make sure we have a stronger national security? How do we get tough on immigration law and secure our border? What can we do to protect the right to life and Second Amendment rights in this country? These are the things Hoosiers care about.
Mr. Rokita.
Thank you. This is a witch hunt. The president is exactly right, and it should end. I can guarantee you, as a recently former Secretary of State for this great state, that it is impossible to hack into voting equipment, to change the tabulation. That's all a Democratic scare because they were so embarrassed for losing the election. They had a terrible candidate. We had a great one. The only thing that this investigation is finding is evidence about crooked Hillary Clinton being crooked. And that brings me to the election in 2016. I'm very proud to have the Trump Indiana 2016 team endorsement, because I was the only one standing up here today that was with the president in the trenches when we were fighting against crooked Hillary Clinton. One, you don't have to believe me, you can go to toddrokita.com to see the footage. One of these guys was on national TV, Luke Messer on national TV, on CNN after the Hillary Clinton debate, disparaging the president. Mike Braun, nowhere to be found, because as we've discovered, he's been a Democrat. He's trying to buy a Senate seat now. He couldn't even give the president one dime.
Stay on topic now, because we're talking about the. I know. Go ahead.
Directly.
30 seconds.
I mean, again, independent fact checkers have looked at Mr. Rokita's campaign and found it to be false. I voted for President Trump in the primary. I supported President Trump throughout the course of the election. But most importantly, I've worked and voted with President Trump in Washington. Hoosiers want conservative leaders who will be with President Trump on the tough votes. That's what I've done in Washington. Frankly, Todd keeps attacking because he knows he hasn't been.
Most
when it comes time for the tough
is
votes,
fighting against crooked Hillary Clinton.
Mr.
Go to
Braun.
toddrokita.com and you'll see the footage
Mr.
for
Braun,
yourself.
You have the stage now.
Okay.
For a full response.
They covered the Mueller investigation. The House had an investigation of that. They folded up their tent. And I believe these guys are right. It's definitely a distraction. We need to start attending to the problems that Hoosiers really care about. Things like repealing Obamacare and replacing it. And you're going to need guys like me that have done things in the real world that have addressed those problems. When it comes to infrastructure, roads are falling apart across the country as well as in Indiana. So you're not going to get anything done there unless you've got guys like me to help President Trump. And by the way, I'm the only one that's on record for Trump all along the way as being inspirational. Never Trumper here, and a guy that was quoted back in 2016 is calling Trump vulgar and not presidential. The only thing on record for me is that he was an inspiration for me to run for this Senate seat because he's an outsider that'll fix things.
30-second response, Mr. Rokita.
Look, PolitiFact is a liberal organization that rubber stamps all the Democratic talking points. It's embarrassing that Luke Messer would cite PolitiFact, liberal PolitiFact, in this whole thing. With Mr. Braun, let me just tell you, there's one reason, among many, that the Trump Indiana team endorsed me and not these guys, because I was with them and you watching tonight in the trenches, making sure crooked Hillary Clinton didn't become president. This guy on TV doing the opposite, helping Hillary Clinton.
Mr. Messer.
Listen, if you don't want to believe the fact checkers, how about all three of Mike Pence's brothers? How about all the folks that worked with Mike Pence as his former chiefs of staff? How about all the conservatives in our state who are working on my campaign that suppored President Trump?
And those anti-establishment ones that are working for me.
Todd wants to hide his voting record. He doesn't vote for President Trump.
90-some% of the time.
Mike here just doesn't want you to know that he's somebody that talks talks conservative back home in Indiana when he's really a Democrat. As Hoosiers learn the truth about both these guys, we're winning this campaign.
30 seconds, Mr. Brown.
Okay. Got two career politicians going at one another. It's easy to see for Hoosiers out there who's lived a life like Trump, built something in the real world. I've built a business across this country to where I've run into bureaucrats and politicians like these guys, and you're going to need a real reinforcement to go out to D.C. to help him. And a never Trumper and a guy that said in 2016 that he was vulgar and not presidential, that's not the kind of reinforcement he needs.
I've got this follow-up question concerning the Russian investigation. Let's stay on point on this. With what you have said, that there is no smoke, there's no fire, if we read you correctly, all three, would you support a decision to fire Special Counsel Robert Mueller and or Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein? Mr. Messer, I'll go with you.
Well, I think there's no question the president has the authority to do that. Some commentators over the weekend, conservative commentators that support President Trump, have expressed their concern that that may be exactly the plan, that they try to do that to make the president somehow look bad. Look, I can tell you that Hoosiers want to move on. They do not believe the Russians determined the election in America in 2016. That didn't happen, and they want to see Washington focused on real-world problems like the economy and our national security.
Mr. Rokita.
I'll take a little bit different tack. Yeah, that probe should end because it's found nothing. It has been a witch hunt. But what it has found should be another investigation. All the evidence against crooked Hillary Clinton, Jim Comey, and all the rest of them. That's what I'm hearing from Hoosiers around the state. Where's the justice? Just because there was a presidential election doesn't mean people didn't commit crimes. And the Democrats, it really looks like, committed crimes. It has to be investigated. That's where we should go, but not with Mueller. He's not a trusted source. He's not going to be a neutral umpire.
Mr. Braun.
You know, Mueller clearly staffed his group with Democrats and supporters that were behind Hillary and Obama. And I think Hoosiers, common sense, they can see that this is not, there's no smoking gun. And I think, again, every day this goes on, it adds to President Trump's credibility, and it fatigues the voters even more. It's time to end it and get to the real problems confronting Americans.
I might just add one revelation over the weekend from Comey's book. It does appear if anyone tried to actually influence the election of 2016, it was Comey, the FBI director, who clearly, through his own words in his book, was trying to manipulate outcomes. It's outrageous. It needs to end.
That's where this investigation should go, but not with Mueller.
Thank you.
Let's talk Social Security and Medicare. Are you willing to pledge that you will make no cuts to Social Security or Medicare? And if not, what specific changes would you support? Mr. Rokita, I'll begin with you.
Yes, I can make that pledge because we don't have to make those cuts. What we want to be about is strengthening Medicare, strengthening Social Security so that they're around for our kids and our grandkids. And that's the beautiful opportunity that we have now if we send the right leaders to the United States Senate, which frankly is full of cowards in both parties. We have got to address this so that people who are on or near to be on these programs can have the promise that was given to them, because that's what they plan for. But those younger of us, well, we need to prepare for a different plan, a new plan that respects how much longer we're living as Americans, respects innovation in medical technology and the expense of that. And when we're younger, we can plan for what that looks like. And that's what we've been trying to do in the House of Representatives. I'm proud to say that the Obamacare healthcare repeal bill was also had several of these elements, and as a result, as it references Medicaid, not Medicare, Social Security. But the fact is, we were able to take that vote, and we came one vote away from getting good reform for next generation to the president's desk, and Joe Donnelly stopped it from happening, and that's why Joe must go.
Thank you. Mr. Braun.
This is one of the clearest examples of why we need something different in Washington. This has not been sneaking up on us. We've known actuarially that this is going to be a problem for a long time. But when you've got the makeup of our Congress and our Senate, where you've got folks in there calculating their votes based upon trying to get reelected, or who gave them a big campaign check, their mind is not focused on the key problems confronting. We're going to need to send people to the U.S. Senate that are there for the right reason to tackle these difficult problems. I can tell you when I get there, my concentration's been in finance and in running a business. I don't let things sneak up on me. I fix a roof before it's going to collapse. We make those hard decisions. You're not going to get that out of the people that we've been sending to D.C. You need to get people that have lived it in the real world. You're not going to fix Social Security, Medicare, or any of the other problems unless you do it.
Thank you. Mr. Messer.
Well, sure, absolutely. I will fight to protect and secure Social Security and Medicare. It was one of President Trump's most important promises. Look, my grandma Lathry, my mother, my father, they're all currently still on those programs, and we want to make sure that those programs are preserved and protect it. As Todd talked about, look, the folks that have been bringing common sense to this debate over the last decade are Republicans in the House who've been willing to say that for those of us that are 50 and younger, if we can change a few approaches to Social Security and Medicare, we can preserve and protect those programs for everybody on this program, on those programs now, so that they will be able to keep them, because it absolutely is a safety net for seniors all across this state. I'll tell you who's endangering Social Security and Medicare. It's politicians like Joe Donnelly, who posture and talk and are never willing to take tough votes that will keep these programs surviving and thriving.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
On that topic of funding, gentlemen, Congress has passed two major bills this year on government funding, the budget and the omnibus spending bill. Mr. Messer, you voted for both of them. Mr. Rokita, you voted against both of them. Explain why your vote was the right one, and Mr. Braun, how you would have voted. Mr. Messer, we'll start with you.
Listen, thank you for asking that question. I will tell you this. My position on that funding bill was 100% the position of the President of the United States. That bill was necessary to protect the men and women who serve in our armed services today. We have men and women in our military who are dying because they do not have the equipment they need to protect them. And when our commander-in-chief came to me and asked, will you support this legislation? I'm going to vote yes, because, see, I am who I say I am. When I tell you I'm going to work with President Trump and get things done in Washington, I'm not just going to say that and go to Washington and vote different. And that's what Hoosiers want. Hoosiers want a conservative leader who will support the Trump-Pence agenda. That's what I've done over the last year and a half in Congress, and that's what I'll do in the United States Senate, too.
Mr. Rokita.
You know, the president couldn't stand this spending bill. He threatened to veto it. He complained about it at every turn. And the reason it wasn't because, like others of us, it was foisted on us by leadership, Republican and Democrat establishment alike, who love the rigged system, who want the status quo, don't want to change the system. So they give our children, our grandchildren, $1.3 trillion in debt. Of course I voted no. You know why? I want to build a wall like President Trump does. There's no funding for a concrete wall, a real wall in this bill. Of all the spending, we don't even have money for the wall. I want to defund sanctuary cities, and I want to slap handcuffs. I have the SLAPP Act that would slap handcuffs on local politicians who refuse to abide by immigration law. There's money for sanctuary cities in this. I want to defund Planned Parenthood along with President Trump. This funds the largest abortion mill on the face of the earth. You know what military men and women say to me, and I thank them for their sacrifice and their service? They say they don't want to give their children this kind of debt. They know better. That's why we voted no, and that was the right vote.
Mr. Rokita, thank you. Mr. Braun, how would you voted?
This is a tough one for my two opponents. They've got the record. One's been in there 8 years, the other 6 years. The thing you need to remember, they voted the same 95% of the time. And in those votes, there was funding for Planned Parenthood, for executive amnesty, for fast-tracking Obama's trade deals, and for billions and billions of dollars in additional debt and spending. So if you're going to really change that dynamic, if you're going to get away from this election casting vote that Todd Rokita made when he's voted like Luke Messer 95% of the time.
That's wrong.
You've got to change the makeup of who's going to the Senate. You got to get guys like me that think independently, that aren't beholden to special interests,
but
that
who
go
aren't
there
trying to buy a Senate
and vote
seat either.
The way Hoosiers want you to. These guys have got a record to defend, and I'd like to hear it.
Hoosiers already have right now a senator who pretends to be conservative back home in Indiana and is a lifetime Democrat that votes that way in Washington. There's no reason for folks to support and trust Mike Braun. But in response to Todd's question, look, President Trump would not sign a spending bill that funded Planned Parenthood or funded sanctuary cities or did not fund his wall. You can believe Nancy Pelosi or Todd Rokita, or you can believe President Trump, who said that this bill starts funding on our wall. And he did ask us to support the troops. That's why.
Yeah, I just would invite people to go back to that press conference where he threatened to veto it and said never again. He was duped. This was foisted on him, again, by establishment Republican and Democrat leadership alike. Luke Messer's in leadership. Luke Messer's part of the establishment. Of course he voted yes. It was the wrong vote. $1.3 trillion on our kids' heads.
Mr. Braun, you have 30 seconds if you'd like it.
You know, it was a classic example of Democrats and Republicans holding hands. And here we go. We were down to $600 billion deficits. Now we're right back up to $1 trillion. They laugh it off out there. Until you get guys like me that understand budgets, have had to live in the black, and that have done it in the real world, expect the same results. If you want more of the same, you've got two guys here that have been in the business for a long time, and it's going to take more guys like me to go there if you're going to change the dynamic.
All right. Gentlemen, we are nearing the time for closing statements. We have about 90 seconds left, so 30 seconds each. All three of you attended Wabash College. A lot of people don't know that. One person posted on our Facebook page about the school's gentleman's rule. Does a campaign with attack ads and biting criticism of each other violate the gentleman's rule? Mr. Rokita?
No, absolutely not. Look, primaries are cleansing processes. I want to beat Joe Donnelly. He is no gentleman for Hoosier values. He votes with Bernie Sanders 85% of the time. I am not waiting till October to be surprised when Joe Donnelly sticks a fork in one of these guys because of all their baggage. This is what the primary is about. Wabash has another motto, too, and that is Wabash always fights. And that's what we're doing.
Mr. Braun, does this violate the gentleman's rule?
Wabash College, great place.
It is.
I went on to Harvard Business School and moved back to my hometown and did something, built a business. These guys trotted off the law school, never did much other than being in politics. So I think, yes, there's a gentleman's rule. Todd's right. We need to find out who's going to best be able to go to D.C. and change the dynamic out there. It doesn't take a Wabash degree to know if you do more of the same, you're going to get more of the same results.
Mr. Messer?
Well, I think Hoosiers can understand that a Harvard Democrat is not a very likely person to stand up for conservative values for us, for Hoosiers in Washington. Look, I'm an old middle linebacker from Wabash College. They do teach us there to follow the gentleman's rule, but as Todd also said, they teach us that Wabash always fights. Listen, I think one of the things that Hoosiers love about President Trump is he's not afraid to fight for the things we believe in. That's what I'm going to do as our United States Senator. As I've said throughout this campaign, I am who I say I am.
All right, we want to fit one more topic in tonight. This week, former House Speaker John Boehner announced his support for medical marijuana. A dramatic shift from his position when he was in Congress. It's been one of the most asked about questions on our Facebook page leading up to this debate, so let's ask it. Do you support medical marijuana, Mr. Braun? 20 seconds.
When it comes to medical marijuana, I think that's going to be states across the country are going to figure that out. I think if a state wants to go to medical marijuana, it ought to be their prerogative. I personally don't, I'm still out on that issue, but to me, states are a great laboratory. It's happening right in front of us. We'll see what happens.
Mr. Rokita?
Yeah, you know, one of the reasons I'm 100% pro-life, no exceptions, and I believe I'm the only one up here that's able to say that, is because of our son Teddy. You know, he has a rare disability called Angelman syndrome, and if he walked in the studio now, he wouldn't do it well, and he's 10 years old and won't talk. But we know he gave each of the cameramen a hug, whether he knew you or not. And that's the reason we need to, from a medical perspective, look at it, but we have got to remove THCs.
All right, Mr. Rokita, Mr. Messer.
Listen, I don't want a federal government that's big enough to tackle this problem. I think it's a problem that's probably best handled at the state level. But I would say this, at a time when we have an opioid epidemic that's at crisis levels across our state, I don't know why we would be opening the door to one of the biggest gateway drugs that could lead to an even bigger crisis.
I associate with Mr. Messer on that.
It is time now for closing statements, gentlemen. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to make that closing. The order was determined by a draw before we came on the air tonight. So we begin with Mr. Braun.
Thank you for your time tonight. You know, President Trump was right. We do not need more career politicians in Washington. We need guys like me that have lived it in the real world. I am a lifetime Republican and a true conservative. Unlike my opponents, I'm not looking for a career in politics. I built one in the real world. I moved back to my hometown and built a small company into a national one. I'm not going there for the pay and the perks, and especially not for the pensions and the insurance that no one else has. If you want a real reinforcement sent for President Trump, you need me. And I won't need to be briefed on the issues because I've lived through them. Very simple and clear. Luke Messer, a lawyer that never really practiced, career politician. Todd Rokita, a lawyer that never practiced, career politician.
Should ask my
Joe Donnelly,
clients about that.
a lawyer that never really practiced, career politician. Who do you trust in Washington to reflect Hoosier values? Mike Braun, ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braun. Mr. Messer.
Hi, I am Luke Messer. If there's one thing that you remember about me tonight, I would want it to be this, that I am who I say I am. Unlike these guys. I am a husband, I'm a father, I'm the son of a single-parent mother. I was raised by my mother who recently retired from the Delta Faucet factory. I'm a person of faith, and I am a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment conservative who supports the Trump agenda and has a record to prove it. I'll tell you who's not who he says he is, and that's who ought to be our focus tonight, Joe Donnelly. Joe Donnelly runs around this state, and he tells Hoosiers that he's conservative, that he's with us on issues like life and the Second Amendment. He's going to work on trying to lower taxes for working Hoosiers. And he goes to Washington and votes with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer 85% of the time. Those folks are wrong way more than 15% of the time. We need a United States senator who will go to Indiana, go to Washington and fight for us. That's what I'll do as your senator.
Mr. Rokita.
Thanks again for everyone's attention tonight. I want to speak to those who are undecided tonight. It comes down to who are you going to trust? Is it Mike Braun, who raised 45 taxes in his short time in the legislature after getting Common Core in his county while lowering his own taxes? Is he the guy to represent us in the Senate? Is it Luke Messer, who's for a pathway to citizenship? And go to toddrokita.com to see the footage on that. I don't think you can trust these guys. Or is it me, Second Amendment, believer, plain meaning of the Constitution, pro-life, 100%. And I'm the only one up here that can say I've never voted to raise your taxes, and I never will. I want English as our official language because it's important to have not only a wall, but a common border, language, and culture. I want to defund sanctuary cities. I want to slap handcuffs on local politicians. Think Rahm Emanuel, think Jerry Brown, who ignore our immigration law. There's a reason the Trump Indiana team supports me, endorse me. They stand with me because I've always stood with you, and I always will. I need your support. Please vote for Todd Rokita.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Our thanks again to the candidates Luke Messer, Mike Braun, and Todd Rokita for joining us tonight. My thanks as well to Brad Byrd and David Williams for joining me to ask questions. Our coverage continues next with Scott Sander in the Spin Room on wishtv.com and other Nexstar station websites across the state. For our entire team at Nexstar, I'm Brooke Martin. Thanks so much for joining us.